My parents kicked me out because of the rumors spread by my brother's toxic ex-girlfriend, but years later, they asked for my help, and I tell them I'll only help if they do something very harsh with my brother. Parents have a lot of expectations for their children. My parents were no different. They had many expectations for me as the oldest child, while my brother could do no wrong. And let me tell you, I noticed it immediately. I didn't know how to explain it when I was young, but I knew something was different in the way they treated my brother and me. Once I was older, I could understand more about the difference in how we were treated, but what I never understood was why. I think one reason this happened is that my brother was my parents' favorite. Come on, we've all thought at least once that our parents might have a favorite. If I asked my parents directly, they would tell me it wasn't true. Of course, they didn't have a favorite. They loved me and Jason equally. But just by looking at how they treated us, you would realize Jason was their favorite. So here's my current problem and the reason I'm here. I cut off all contact with my parents for years, but they've come back into my life after doing something horrible. Other family members say I should forgive and forget, while I'm just upset. It's not easy to forgive and forget, which is why I'm here. First, I should go back a bit and explain some of the context, so you can understand how the hell I got to where I am now with, well, my parents. I was born first, and then a year and a half later, my brother Jason was born. Out of the two of us, I was the planned one, while my brother was a surprise baby. Stereotypically, siblings so close in age are supposed to be close, but my brother and I are not. The problem is that my parents made it clear they preferred him. For some reason, he could get away with anything, even a crime, while I couldn't do anything wrong without being punished. It was strange that I, the planned child, was treated worse than my brother. Imagine how confusing that is for a kid who just wants the love and acceptance of their parents. I was always the one who lived up to my parents' high expectations, got better grades, did all my homework, participated in all the school activities, and never got into trouble. I met all the requirements my parents had for me, always getting straight A's and finishing every task I was assigned. When I was old enough, I swapped extracurricular programs for a part-time job, but I always arrived on time. Most importantly, I never got into trouble, not even once. The same couldn't be said for my brother. He was a mess from the moment my parents brought him home from the hospital. You see, my brother got bad grades, did his homework halfway, and was always up to some kind of mischief. It's not that he got into trouble with the law or anything like that, but my brother was always on the verge of crossing the line. It made me mad because, no matter how hard I tried, my parents just wouldn't ease up on me. Every time I made a small mistake, which didn't happen often, they yelled at me and punished me. Well, the punishment usually consisted of staying home without going out, which made me furious. The little free time I had, I wanted to spend with my friends. Did Jason ever get into trouble? Well, kind of. My parents would punish him, but it could barely be considered punishment. All I could do was glare at him in fury, while the anger boiled inside me. Now you can see why I no longer have contact with my parents. By the time I was 18, I hated how they treated me, and I didn't understand why they couldn't hold my brother and me to the same standards. I mean, it wasn't fair. There was a moment when I was a teenager when I had to realize that this was just how it was, and nothing I did would change that. My parents were never going to change their ways. So the easiest thing I could do was keep my head down and not anger them. All I had to do was get through high school. I would officially graduate, get a scholarship, and move on with my life. But you may be wondering what the incident was that made me decide to cut my parents off for good. It happened during my senior year of high school. I remember that when I arrived at school that day, everyone was staring at me and whispering behind my back. It was making me incredibly nervous. Finally, I pulled one of my friends aside to ask what the hell was going on. There was a rumor going around school, and it had to do with Missy, my brother's ex-girlfriend. She and my brother had broken up about a month before the incident. I had no idea why they broke up, and honestly, I didn't care. It was my brother's business, not mine. Missy was spreading rumors about the two of us. She was saying that we had slept together about 3 months earlier, when my brother was away at camp. She was claiming she was 3 months pregnant and that the baby was mine. That couldn't have been further from the truth. First, I was a virgin at the time. And second, Missy wasn't my type. Even if Missy had been the last woman on earth, I would never have been with her. She started spreading this rumor, so I had to constantly deny it to everyone at school. No one understood why she would lie about it, and neither did I. It didn't make sense. Why make up such a lie just to make my brother jealous? The rumors eventually reached my parents. I came home that day, and my brother accused me of being a terrible brother, a bad person, and that I would be an irresponsible father. Missy had told my brother she was sorry, and that I had told her to get rid of the baby because I didn't want to be involved. I never said any of that, obviously. They didn't want to listen to me, and for over a week, they hounded me, telling me I had to take responsibility for what I'd done. I told them there was nothing to take responsibility for because I hadn't done anything. It got to the point where they kicked me out of the house. I came home one day to find 2 bags with my stuff packed outside, with nowhere to go. I went to the neighbors and called my aunt. She lived in the next town over and had always been my safe place. When I managed to reach her, she was shocked that my parents had done that and took me in. It was hard living with my aunt because I had to change schools, but I finished high school and prepared for college. Meanwhile, Missy kept spreading rumors. I eventually confronted her and told her that when the baby was born, I would take a DNA test to prove the baby wasn't mine. Of course, she didn't want me to take a DNA test because that baby wasn't mine. First of all, because we had never slept together, and second, because the child was my brother's. My brother suspected it and could have stopped all this, but since he didn't want to take responsibility, Missy used me to get back at my brother, making him look like the school's cuckold and dragging me into the whole mess. Do you think my parents apologized? No, of course not. They preferred to stay on good terms with Missy, who was going to give them a grandchild, rather than apologize to me, the son they never cared about. At that point, I decided it was time to cut my family out of my life. I went to college, enrolling in journalism, something I had always wanted to do. Fast forward 10 years to the present. Now I'm 28 and have a successful career. I've been recognized for my work on national TV. Maybe that's where my parents saw me because, shortly after a recent TV appearance, they decided to write me a letter. Yes, a letter. A small part of me hoped they were contacting me to apologize or at least congratulate me on everything I had accomplished. But no, it wasn't that. My parents were contacting me because they needed help. Well, my brother needed help. According to my parents, my brother Jason was sick, couldn't pay his medical bills, and was currently in the hospital trying to recover while worrying about the expenses. My parents had tried to pay what they could, but they had limited income. Most of their money was going toward the mortgage, which they were still paying off. I can't believe my parents are contacting me because my brother needs help. This just shows that my brother will always be considered number 1. What do you think I should do? Update 1. All the responses I've received from you have been overwhelming. I never thought so many people would respond, but it's nice to know that there are people out there who care about me, and all of you are just strangers. I guess I've forgotten what it's like to receive that from my own family since honestly I don't expect it from anyone. Well, let's get to the update. I agreed to meet with my parents to see what the hell they wanted, about a week after they first contacted me. What they had to say left me stunned, and honestly, it made me really angry. They told me that my brother really needed the money for his medical bills. So I insisted, trying to find out what was wrong with him. My mom was a little reluctant, and my dad wouldn't even look me in the eyes. I kept pressing, threatening to leave if they didn't tell me. I was ready to walk out of their lives, this time for good. This made my dad the one to give the information. Turns out, my brother had been in a car accident. That happens, but I felt like there was more to it. When I pushed further, Mom admitted that the reason my brother had the accident was because he was drinking. He was driving drunk. Yes, the accident was caused by my brother in the first place. He wasn't sick or seriously injured, as I had initially thought. I would have helped if the accident hadn't been his fault. Like, for example, if he had been hit by a drunk driver, sure. But that's not what happened. Guys, my brother caused the accident by crashing his car from drinking so much. He was going to survive, but he would be in the hospital recovering for a while. And to top it off, he couldn't pay child support for his kid, my nephew. So my parents wanted help with that. They wanted to make sure their grandson was well taken care of. To be honest, I barely knew my nephew. I'd seen him a few times when he was little, but I hadn't seen him in years, except in photos. Sometimes I'd look him up online just to see how he was doing. The kid isn't to blame for what's going on, between my parents and me. He was simply born into a complicated family situation. His mother wasn't much better. You know how quickly she dragged me into her crazy plan. I never got a real apology from Jason's ex for trying to pin the pregnancy on me. Not that an apology would have helped much, but I think it would have made me feel a little better. Eventually, I got up and left. They yelled at me, but all I did was turn around and tell them I wasn't going to help. No amount of yelling is going to make me change my mind. They can scream at me until they're blue in the face. My brother got himself into this mess, he can get himself out. I've made something of myself without any help from my father, mother, or brother. They've only made my life harder, and cutting them off was the best thing I've ever done. Because while I still had them in my life, they were just holding me back and not letting me reach my full potential. They keep trying to contact me, sending other family members to tell me I need to help them. They're all blocked. There's no way I'm going to help them, but I also can't just let them off the hook so easily. Mom and Dad need to learn a lesson. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'll sit and think about it. If you have any ideas on how I can get revenge, please leave me a suggestion. I'm willing to try anything at this point if I can make my parents squirm. Maybe that sounds bad, but they deserve it after what they've done to me. Update 2. I've been thinking a lot, especially after reading your comments. Some people suggested I try to save face by agreeing to help my parents, but giving them an ultimatum they could never accept. I thought long and hard about what that could be. Finally, I decided to tell my parents that the only way I would give them money is if they cut off all contact with my brother. I would give them the money to help my nephew and pay my brother's bills this one time, but after that, they would have to get rid of him. I mean, he still lived with my parents, so they would have to kick him out for good. I decided to tell my parents this about a week after our initial conversation. It was enough time for me to plan my strategy and decide what I wanted to do. They probably thought I was taking time to figure out how to get the money for them, but I wasn't going to give them any money. I was just pulling a prank on them. The expression on my parents' faces dropped. Dad started saying I was crazy and that I was asking them for something that wasn't fair. But I stood firm. I was very determined to do this. I told them that was the only way I would help them. If they didn't do it, they could say goodbye to the money. My parents left furious after that, and I tried not to laugh until they were gone. Honestly, it went exactly the way I wanted. At this point, I don't think I'll have to deal with my parents anymore. I have an amazing career and have been casually dating someone for the past few months. I don't think I'll see my parents again, but anything could happen. If there are more updates, I'll come back here and let you know immediately. Update 3. Here I am, back with another update. I hadn't heard from my parents for a long 2 weeks. My thoughts were that I'd never talk to them again, or if they did, it would be to yell at me and tell me how terrible of a son I am or something like that. I was convinced they wouldn't speak to me again, until they did. To my surprise, they called me. I expected them to keep contacting me, begging me for money. Then, when they realized I wasn't going to change my mind, I thought they'd take it out on me, calling me selfish. But, well, they didn't do any of that. Do you know what they did? They ended up telling me they had done it, or rather, that they were going to do it. After thinking it over, they talked to my brother and told him they would help him one last time. But once he was out of the hospital, he would have to find somewhere else to go. Under no circumstances could he continue living with them. To prove it to me, they recorded the phone call they had with him. He was not happy. My brother hurled a lot of curses and insults, all directed at me. I almost wanted to laugh, but I managed to hold it in so I wouldn't ruin the situation at that moment. I told my parents they would get the money, but I needed a few days to gather it. Please don't get mad at me. Some of you are probably screaming at your computer and writing angry comments right now, but I had no plans of really helping them. The thing is, when I told my parents I'd help them, I wasn't telling the truth. You see, I never thought my parents would actually go through with cutting off my brother. I was extremely surprised when they told me they were going to do it. In my whole life, they had never done anything like that for me. My brother had always been the favorite. He was the center of their attention, and I was the one left on the side, with impossible expectations to meet. It's not fair that they've done this to me, so now I'm going to play a little game with them. Now that things have changed a bit, I'm going to adjust my plan just a little. Either way, my parents aren't going to get the money. I'll come back here and make sure to tell you all what's going on with my family. I promise you won't be disappointed in me. Under no circumstances am I going to change my mind. My parents and my brother won't get a single cent from me. So, yes, I'll probably have at least one more update soon. Stay tuned. Update 4. My parents and I met the other day, about 3 days after our last conversation. I met with them at a coffee shop. It's better to meet people in public. That way everyone is on equal footing. We had a small, civilized chat for a while, which was surprising. I couldn't believe they were interested in talking to me about something related to my life. They had always wanted to get straight to the point about my brother. Eventually they got to the point and asked me about the money. I smiled and pulled out a check. I wrote it right there. They took it, with smiles on their faces, but what they didn't know was that the only thing written on the check was a big "Go to hell." Yes, literally, I wrote "Go to hell" on the check, childish probably, but it felt incredible to write that, and you know what? It was even better seeing the expression on their faces when they opened it and read it. It wasn't an amount of money, but rather words I had wanted to say to them for a long time. After the shock wore off, they asked me what was going on. I just smiled smugly and told them I wasn't going to give them the money. This whole time, I had just been stringing them along. If they had tried to contact me and apologize at some point in the past, maybe things would have been a little different, but that's not how things turned out. I got up and left. I haven't heard from them since that dinner. They've tried to contact me, and so has my brother, but well, this is where I draw the line. The only family I'll talk to is my aunt because I care about her. Other than her, I have my friends and my girlfriend. It's hard to say what's going to happen to my parents and brother, but you know what? I don't care. I've erased them from my life forever. and they won't be part of my life, not in the future, nor the past, nor the present. Honestly, before I would have felt sad about this, but now I'm thrilled not to have to deal with them for even another second. Update 5. I know many think I was the bad guy for playing with my parents' feelings. I get it. From the outside, it might seem like I was cruel, but before anyone judges me, it's important to understand the truth behind all of this. My parents never once apologized to me for everything that happened in the past. They never wanted a sincere reconciliation. They only wanted my money. For them, that was what mattered. They never saw me as a son they loved or valued, and now with what I know, it's clear they tried to manipulate me too, only this time, it didn't work out as they expected. The recording they gave me, the one where they apparently had a heated argument with my brother, was a well-planned performance. My parents never intended to cut ties with him. Why would they? He's always been their favorite. What they wanted was to make me believe they were willing to sacrifice something for me, when in reality, they just wanted the money. Their plan was simple: get my check and then cut me out of their lives again. As if I were, and at the moment that doesn't surprise me, because it's not as if my parents, after having a favorite son for their whole lives, were suddenly going to want to call me overnight. That's not how things work, and deep down, I always knew. But the most interesting thing about all this is how I found out the truth behind the sham. I got an unexpected call. It was from Missy. Yes, the same Missy who, years ago, almost ruined my life with her lies. I had no reason to listen to her, nor to trust a single word that came out of her mouth. But something in her tone, or maybe just my own curiosity, made me stop before hanging up. "It's important," she said. "You're going to want to hear this." I decided to give her a few minutes, with the idea that if what she had to say was stupid or a lie, I would just hang up and get on with my day. I wasn't expecting an apology, much less anything else. Missy told me something that at first left me surprised, although thinking about it later, it all made sense. She told me that my brother owed her a large amount of child support and that she had been pressuring him to pay, even while he was still in the hospital recovering from his accident. He promised her that soon everything would be settled, that she shouldn't worry. He told her to wait a little because, according to my brother, I was going to give money to my parents, and with that, he could pay off his debt to her. Missy, furious over the lack of payments and seeing that my brother and parents' plan hadn't worked, decided to tell me everything as a form of revenge. According to Missy, my brother had confessed the whole plan they had orchestrated together with my parents. The recording of the call, my parents' performance telling him they were going to kick him out of the house, it was all part of a setup to make me believe they were really willing to leave my brother. Once they got the money from me, my brother would continue living with them, and everything would go back to how it was before. It was a dirty plan, and hearing about it made my stomach turn. Now, being honest, I have mixed feelings. Part of me wonders if what Missy told me is entirely true. After all, this is the same woman who was willing to drag my name through the mud, lie, and make me out to be the father of her child, all just to get back at my brother. Could she be lying again, trying to manipulate the situation in another way? It's a possibility. Missy is not someone I trust, not even remotely. But, on the other hand, what she told me fits perfectly with what I already knew about my parents. They were never going to cut ties with my brother. It's always been him, always Jason. I was just a tool in their plan, a source of money. I'm still not sure what to think. I don't know if everything Missy said is true, or if it's just her twisted version of events. But what I do know is that I made the right decision by distancing myself from them. My parents and my brother are so entangled in their own lies and manipulations that there's no way I can have a healthy relationship with them again. It's better this way, from a distance. At least this way, I don't have to keep dealing with their games. So, this is my last update. It might not be the ending many expected, but for me, it's the closure I needed. And that, at the end of the day, is the only thing that matters.